Tola Akinsulire has over 2 decades of experience across audit, asset management, fund administration, fundraising, real estate, and strategic planning. He was on the implementation team for the takeoff of ARM Pensions, one of Nigeria's first and leading pension fund managers. He currently leads Mixter Africa's operation in West Africa, covering Cote d'Ivoire and Senegal. Mixter Africa is a company involved in real estate in Nigeria and Africa. He holds an MBA from the Manchester Business School, United Kingdom, and belongs to different professional bodies across the globe. Ladies and gentlemen, please make welcome to the Compass 2023, Tola Akinsulire.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Great to be here. First and foremost, I'd like to appreciate the leadership of the church for inviting me for this year, the conference, the Compass. One thing I would say here is this. My relationship with Pastor Godwin, there's something which I've noticed from the times when we have basically known each other, like you said, over 2 decades, is his commitment to excellence in execution. And so for me, I consider it a wonderful opportunity to be part of his current iteration of excellence in execution. And thank you very much for the wonderful open speech. Even I was also taking notes in terms of some of the things you were sharing. Okay, so our conversation today is pretty simple. Skills needed to be locally present and globally relevant. I'd like to start our conversation with a story. After I completed my undergrad, I was posted to Yobe State. I did my primary posting in Unguru. For those of you who are familiar with the whole old geography of Nigeria, Unguru was actually the terminal point of the old railway service that we had in Nigeria. I was posted there to teach mathematics in a secondary school, and the typical thing, I'm sure you are all familiar, is that everybody says, "Oh, when you're doing your NYC, try as much as possible to get your posting in Lagos, Abuja, or Port Harcourt to make sure you are positioned for a job right after you finish NYC." Well, I did not get to do that, as you obviously are aware. But as things would pan out, I actually got a job within 2 months after I passed out. After I passed out of my NYSC. And everything was going on normally. My career was progressing normally until something happened 2 years into my career. Now, I'm going to put a pin on the story for now, and we'll come back to it later on. Now, in our conversation today, I would be remiss if I basically just launch into diatribe and giving you a plethora of different skills that you need to acquire. And the reason is this. Work is one of the very few activities that we all engage in that will bring the whole person into it. For example, let's say you volunteer in a not-for-profit or you volunteer at church. It is quite possible for you to hide the true nature of who you are, give a good performance, maybe 1 or 2 hours within the week, and everybody thinks that everything is all right with you. But with work, because of the long hours that you spend at work, it's almost impossible for the true nature of who you are to not show itself up. And that's the reason why the approach which I'm going to adopt for today's conversation is going to be slightly different. Before we start layering on the skills which you need to build to be globally relevant, I would like to actually build on something first and foremost. I would like to first and foremost give you a holistic picture in terms of how you should actually build yourself. There are three structures you need to have in place. First and foremost, you need to have a personal success structure. Number two, you need to have a professional success structure. And finally, you need to have an organizational success structure. Now, we're going to go through all the three structures one at a time. First, let's start with the personal success structure. What's the first thing you need to have here? First and foremost, you need to have a clear set of values, clear set of core value statements that define how you want to live your life and how you want to show up in your career. Now, for me, like I was saying, I got my letter of appointment for the first job I was ever going to do on August 31st, which was a Friday, and I was expected to resume on September 5th, which was a Wednesday. Between Friday and Wednesday, I sat down and I wrote three value statements, which would basically define how I would show up at work. The first of the value statements which I wrote, which is very much aligned to my Christian experience, I said, Because I've been bought with the blood of Jesus Christ, I'm too expensive for any employer. And as a result of that, I put myself under permanent employment with God. And so, whatever employment I find myself, I'm basically on deployment from heaven. Now, what does that value statement basically mean? It basically means I've taken myself out of the typical office gossip of complaining that, these guys are paying us peanuts, they are treating us like monkeys. It doesn't mean that I treat myself like a doormat, like I basically don't do anything. For me, the way it works is this. If heaven tells me that I need to negotiate higher, then I negotiate. If heaven tells me I need to keep my mouth shut, then I keep my mouth shut. And so I don't join the typical office gossip or the office grapevine complaining about what senior management is doing in terms of how pay is structured, the people on top are getting more. No, I keep myself out of that. The second value statement, which I wrote for myself, I said, don't do in 2 hours what you can do in 1 hour. Now, that value statement basically defined how I was going to show up in terms of my productivity and effectiveness. It also meant that, look, if I give a commitment to someone and told the person that, look, you're going to get this document tomorrow morning, I was definitely going to keep that commitment, whatever it takes. Simple, plain and simple. So it defined in terms of the effectiveness I was going to bring on the job. I wasn't going to dilly-dally in terms of how I was going to do my job. And at the same time, I was also going to keep my commitments. Whatever commitments I made, I was going to keep that commitment. The final value statement, which I wrote myself, was this. I was going to use work to create great relationships. I repeat, I told myself I was going to use work to create great relationships. My perspective about people at work is that people are not automatons in terms of the way they approach things. People are not robots. And so on the basis of that, I wanted to use work as a basis for creating relationships. So for example, if I was going to meet someone, I needed to get something from the person. I'm not going to just launch straight and ask the person, please, can you give me this? The first thing in which I have to do is I have to gauge, how do I bring this? What's the current state of mind that the person is? How do I engage with the person? And you believe something that on the basis of that particular value statement, I was able to create great relationships that I've taken into longer aspects of life. That's the first thing. Like I said, the first thing you need to do in your personal success structure is to have value statements that define how you want to show up in life and at work. The second thing which you need to have is you need to have a support system. And your support system, you need to have three things, three core relationships that would help you in terms of you being able to be relevant and present at every single time. The first, you need to have accountability friends. The second, you need to have masterminds that you are part of. And the third you need to have relationship with mentors and coaches. Now, depending on the stage of life that you are in, you can decide whichever one you want. Because, for example, when I started my career, I only had an accountability friend. And as time, currently now, I have accountability friends. I have masterminds that we meet on a regular basis, both paid and free masterminds. And I have, for example, I have a spiritual director that I meet with on an ongoing basis. It's a paid relationship. I have a business coach that I meet with on an ongoing basis. So depending on the stage of life that you are in, you can decide which one of these support structures that you want to have in your life. The final thing which you need to have in your personal success structure is you need to have a clear financial plan for how you want to live your current life and how you want to live your future life. Now, why is this important? You see, as you go in your career, money starts to become a stressor, and it's very good if you can define what is the most core aspect of how you want to invest your money. I'm sure you probably heard the story about Warren Buffett, that Warren Buffett has lived in the same house for 65 years. The man is about 92 years now, and he's lived in the same house for 65 years. Even though people say, he's frugal, etc. and things like that, but basically, I see a man who has defined how he wants to live, how he wants to use money. He has defined his lifestyle. On the basis of that, he doesn't get into the pressures of, I've got more money, so that means I basically have to spend money to get a new house, get a bigger house. You see, the three aspects which I've highlighted within your personal success structure, they deal with one, your personal power, which is driven by your values. Number two, your relationship power in terms of the structures that you have to support you. And then the third deals with your money power in terms of how you control money and you don't let money control you. This is the whole framework on which I basically define the personal success structure that you need to have. Now, let's get into the meat of everything, which is where we go into your professional success structure. Now, the first thing you need to have here is this. You need to have a clear definition of what role you want to be or you currently are, and the skills that you need to excel in it. I'm going to repeat that. You need to be clear about the role that you are in or the role that you want to be and the skills that you need to excel in that role. Now, back to my story when I said I was posted to Nguru. Now, Nguru, as I said, is the terminal point of the railway service, the old railway service that we had in Nigeria. And one unique thing that happened is that a number of people basically got on the railway train and they followed the train to the end of the terminal. And so you find that in Nguru, you had a pretty cosmopolitan nature of people. You had people from the east, from the west, because they basically followed the train. They followed the train and they got to the end and they basically settled down there. And as we were there, one of the coppers that we were serving together, he looked at the blend of people there and he decided that wouldn't it be a bad idea for me to have a business school in this particular, I'm sorry, a computer school in this particular location. Now, please take note, the guy who is saying he wants to start a business school knows nothing about computers. But what did he do? He spoke with a couple of coppers, found out that there are different people who could teach different skills, etc. and everything. And he came back to Lagos, got his brother to give him a computer. He came and he started a business school. Now, as a copper, you have more time than money. Obviously, I didn't have enough money. So I sat down with one of the guys who was teaching. I was like, look, I would really, really like to learn, to be part of this computer school, to learn something, but I need your advice in time. And the person said, look, because you are a numbers guy, my recommendation for you is to go and learn Excel. And that was what I spent money to. He said, look, if you learn Excel, with the skills you pick up from Excel, you'll be able to navigate through Word, you'll be able to navigate through PowerPoint and things like that. And that was what I saved money to do. I got Excel, and I got the Excel training. And as it would turn out, by doing that Excel training, by the time I came back to Lagos and I was about to take my first job, oh, are you familiar with using Office suite of programs? Oh yeah, sure, I'm familiar with it. Simply because I prepared myself for the skills that was necessary for the next job that I was going to take. Yeah, it wasn't relevant for me as a teacher, but it definitely was relevant for me for the next job that I was going to take. And that's very important. You need to ask yourself, what are the technical skills that you need for the job that you have or the job that you want? And you have to start building it however it is, whatever it takes. You need to make the sacrifice. You need to be disciplined in terms of committing, whether it's resources or time, to getting the skill that you need to move you to the next level, either in the job you have or the job you want. Now, the next thing which you need to build is you need to build your ability to lead people. Now, when I tell you build your ability to lead people, the thing most of you will get twisted with is you think leading when you are in charge. Now, there are two aspects of leading. There's leading when you are in charge. There's leading when you are not in charge. And I can tell you, in the world that we're in now, you need to build the skill more of how to lead when you are not in charge. And the reason is this, because you're going to be having a lot of cross-functional teams. Cross-functional teams in terms of, we want to execute a project, we want to execute an initiative, and we bring different people together from different units to be able to pursue that. When you are part of that team, you need to have the ability to lead by even when you are not in charge. Now, the philosophy for most of us when it comes to leading when you are in charge, when you are in charge, you lead more by directives than objectives. But to lead when you are not in charge, you need to lead more by objectives and not by directives, because you don't even have the power to make directives. I mean, and this is something even I do with the people that work with me. For example, I had a project team that I had to set up. Within the project team, I had the head of sales, I had the head of technical, I had the CFO, and then guess who I made the head of the team? I made a senior associate in the planning department as the head of the team. And the reason was this. The guy in the planning team is the one who sees the holistic nature of the project. So in terms of skill set, he's the right guy to lead the team. And I remember before I told him to take up the role, I actually gave him a bit of coaching. I told him, guy, I'm giving you this role. I'm not expecting you to be the secretary. I want you to lead. And I told him clearly, I said, look, you're going to be leading not by objectives. Not by directive. You're going to be leading by objectives. So you need to be very clear in terms of the objectives you're going to be setting for everybody. Because the only thing which you can bring everybody unified on is a clear set of objectives. If we all have a common set of objectives in terms of how we want this project to succeed, it's a lot easier for you to give direction to people. So that's a core skill you need to build. The ability to lead people. And you should be able to lead people whether you're in charge or whether you're not in charge. Now, the third skill you need to add under your professional success structure is the skill to focus yourself on what you're passionate about that nobody else can do. Now, that's very, very important. You see, most of you they've obviously told us over the years that, look, we need to focus on what we're passionate about. But I'm going to put a caveat: focus on what you're passionate about that nobody else can do. Dan Miller of Strategic Coach calls it your unique ability. Now, back to the story I started with. I told you that something happened in my second year of my career that basically changed the trajectory of the move on my career. So, the head of my department, they wanted to move him to a new department to go and start up a new team, and they were trying to recruit for that role. So they had been interviewing different people, and honestly, I was looking forward to getting a new boss. And that was how one afternoon the deputy head honcho calls me to our office and tells me, Godfather style, I'm going to make you an offer that you can't refuse. And the offer is plainly simple: we want you to lead the team. For me, I mean, when she said that, let me tell you, it looked like they pulled the rug under my feet. I basically was like, what? I wasn't expecting it at all. Fast forward a couple of months later, the same person was saying that, hey, Tola, you've changed our idea in terms of the type of person who should lead this role, the way you have performed. Now, let me explain what happened. The role was in an asset management firm. It was in fund accounts department of the asset management firm. Now, the typical philosophy which leadership had in terms of who should hold this role is that it should be somebody who has an audit experience, at least 5 years audit experience, because they believe that somebody who has audit experience is a bit more nitty gritty, is able to pick up the weeds from the bushes and everything. But for me, I've always had a passion for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. It's something that comes naturally to me. And I remember when I was going into my SS class, a lot of my classmates were surprised that I was going to commercial. They thought I was going to science. I was like, yeah, just because I have a passion for that does not mean I have to go into science. And on the basis of that, my passion for science and technology and everything, I remember when I started working in the asset management firm in the fund accounts department, instead of going to do your typical exam, CFA, I went to do Certified Information Systems Audit, that's CISA. Now, it doesn't give you technical IT skills, but what that examination gave me, it gave me the confidence to be able to hit on any particular IT system. The application we were using, we were the only company that was using that application in the whole of West Africa. And simply because I did CISA, it gave me the courage and the confidence to be able to navigate that system. That, the joke they started cracking was that, oh, we can actually make tea with that application. And what I did was I used my unique ability, my flair for science, technology, engineering, mathematics. I used it to navigate that system in a way that I was able to produce results faster. Like they said, at that point in time, the typical thing that you have, the way people see IT people is that IT guy is the guy that sits at the server room, maintaining the server. People never saw IT as an enabler of business. And I basically changed that philosophy that, look, hey, what we actually need for somebody to lead this team is somebody who actually sees IT as an enabler, who is able to leverage IT and actually create innovative solutions that would able to drive productivity. Something completely different. I used something that I was passionate about to do the work in a way that nobody else had done it before. Pretty simple. And that's something you need to build on. You need to start asking yourself, what's your unique ability? What's the way in which you see things differently that you can bring into your job, that you can introduce into your job, that helps to transform the way that your work is done, that helps to deliver your productivity faster than any other person. And that completes everything I'm going to be talking about under your professional success structure. Now we'll go into your organizational success structure. The first thing you need to know, which you need to be clear about, is you need to be clear about how you actually meet the needs of the people that you serve. One of the biggest mistakes a lot of us make is that when we get to a job, they give you a job description and you assume that the job description is basically what you're going to be doing. Your job description is a guide, it's not a manual. I repeat, your job description is a guide, it's not a manual. You need to be able to find out what people need. And I'm going to use an example for my career. Like when I joined the organization that I was telling you about, there's a meeting that we used to have every Friday. The meeting was primarily between portfolio managers and relationship managers. We were meant to prepare the report for that meeting. And before I joined the organization, sometimes the report would only just be ready as they were going into the meeting. And so, for example, let's say you go into the meeting and the performance shows that portfolio performance was very bad. Guess what the portfolio managers will say? This report is wrong. It cannot be right. Why? Simply because it shows that the performance. And you ask, what's the reason why it is wrong? No, it just cannot be right. So guess what I did? So leveraging my unique ability for IT and everything, I was able to turn around the speed of delivering that report almost about 2 hours before the meeting. But it wasn't just that. For me, I had to sit down and I thought about it. Look, what really is the needs of the portfolio manager? What's the need of the relationship manager? The need of the portfolio manager is that the portfolio manager does not does not want to be embarrassed at the meeting. He does not want to look like a fool when he shows up at the meeting. What is the need of the relationship manager? The relationship manager wants to know that the portfolio performance is aligned to whatever his or her client wants. And if it is not aligned, what are the corrective measures that the team is taking to do that? And so guess what I did? First and foremost, when I generated the report, like I said, I was able to generate the report a lot faster. I first sent it to the portfolio manager so that the portfolio manager sees the performance of all the portfolios. And sometimes the portfolio managers, when they get it, the first thing they're like, wait a sec, this particular portfolio, you shouldn't have this performance. It's like, oh, wait, there was a trade that I told the stockbroker to execute. Typically, trades take T+3. And because of that, the broker might not have confirmed it. And then the next thing, he calls the broker. The broker says, oh, I've executed the trade. This is the details of it. The portfolio manager goes on, updates the trade, and they're like, okay, yeah, this is looking at. And there are sometimes, by the time I send the report, it's actually a bad performance. But because he's gotten it, he's like, okay, this is the reason why this performance is bad. Okay, this is what I'm going to do the next week to correct it. And on the basis of that, by the time they show up to look at the point, I really wasn't even printing the report. I just sent the report to everybody via email, and then everybody prints it out. But what would now happen is that by the time they get into the meeting, the portfolio manager is actually giving explanations. For example, if there's a bad performance, the portfolio manager is like, okay, this is what we're going to do to correct it. Effectively, we were showing up into the meeting like Daniel in the lion's den, and basically telling all the lions, hey, keep your mouth shut, keep your mouth shut. Nobody's going to be talking about us. So literally, we showed up to the meeting. We are basically spectators. We are no longer the center of conversation of somebody saying your report was wrong. But it had to take me knowing what did the relationship manager and what did the portfolio managers really, really need. And that's a skill which you need to build. Please, like I repeat again, your job description is simply a guide. It's not your manual. You are the one that has to work the work and be able to find out what people need. The second thing which you need in your organizational success structure is you need to know how to communicate with people. Now, I know everybody talks about diversity in the workplace, but there's a line of diversity.
You're breaking. I don't know if I'm the only one.
Oh,
Hello,
apologies.
Tola.
Yes.
Yeah, you were breaking when you wanted to start that next
Okay. So
point.
can
So
I
I
go again?
don't
Can
know
I
if
restart it? Okay. Let me just restart it again. Okay. So
Yes,
yeah.
you can just backtrack a little.
Okay, so let me backtrack. So I would just let me backtrack and just close out on the professional success structure. So the last thing which I said was that look, you need to always remember that in terms of your organizational success structure, the first part of you knowing what your customers, the people that you serve, they need. Your job description is primarily a guide. It is not the manual. You have to do the work of actually finding out what people need. The second thing which you need to have in your organization success structure is this. You need to realize there's a lot of diversity in the workplace. Diversity in terms of gender, and there's a diversity I'm actually going to tell you about. What you probably may not know is that this is probably one of the first generations where you have at least 4 generations of people within the workplace. You have baby boomers, you have Generation X, you have millennials, you have Gen Zers, and every one of them sees life in different perspectives, and every one of them likes to be communicated with differently. And you, as someone working with all these different classes of people, you need to know how to communicate with them. Because if you don't communicate with them the way you ought, the way they want, what you're going to end up having is you're going to have a lot of friction on the work. Let me give an example. When I first, at a point in time in my earlier start of my career, I had a senior person in the organization who called me. Now, my organization was pretty a flat structure. Everything was all first name basis, which was pretty novel at that time because most organizations were still using Mr. This, Mrs. This, Miss That. And sorry, I've been muted. Somebody's muted. Okay. Okay, somebody muted me in error. Okay, no problem. So back to the point I was saying. Like I said, the organization I was in then, this was novel. Everybody was basically using first name. So you send emails, hi this, hi that. And everything was all going peaches and cream until one day a senior person called me and said, hey, I don't like the way you send me emails and you write, hi this. Hi this is the what you use for your mates. It's not for what you use for me. Now, I could have been irritated by that, saying that, hey, but this is how everybody else does it. This is how everything does it. But I was like, look, if this is the person's complaint, okay, no problem, I'll adapt. And so what I did was every time I send an email to the person, I write, hello, this person. And I found out the person was okay with me writing, hello, this. In addition, anytime I would meet the person, I showed a bit of differential respect, but it wasn't like, the kind of bow. Look, I was still very, very fun with the person. Look, I would go to the person's office, spin her chair. She was a lot more older than it, but just to create that kind of rapport that, oh yes, I'm respecting you, but at the same time, I'm still going to be a little bit fun and casual with you. And she appreciated the balance which I brought into that relationship. Fast forward a couple of years later, in another company that I was working with, I was reporting to a committee, and as it turned out, she was the chairman of the committee that I was reporting to, and she had seen the way she was raving about, our time together, can you imagine that Tola has even gone ahead, worked in different places. He went to this place in Europe. He was working. He didn't even keep me up to date in terms of what's been happening to him, and that simply worked out well, simply because when we had the first contact, I was able to adapt the way I communicated to her to align with what really mattered to her. And this is something you have to, for example, within my workplace, there's a difference in the way I communicate with the people that are married, that have kids. Anytime I go with them, there are differences in terms of how I communicate with them. The first thing I ask them, the way I talk with them, and there's difference in the way in which I talk with somebody who is single. I have to tailor my communication to every person. Yeah, it's like a lot of work, but you have to ask yourself, how do you want to be remembered at work? What sort of experience do you want to give people? When you define the sort of experience you want to give people, whether you are working with people virtually, look, I'm the kind of guy, when I write my emails, depending on the type of person, even official emails, I try to write it in a way that is fun and interesting, depending on the type of person. Sometimes I start my email and I say, instead of hello or hi, I said howdy, or whatever. The whole idea is knowing each person and knowing what it is that works for each person. Now, the final thing which I'm going to add to your toolkit under your organizational success structure is you need to learn how to manage up and manage down. You need to learn how to manage your bosses and how to manage the people that you lead. When it comes to your bosses, and I'm going to give you the simple, plain, straight fact in terms of what it is that your boss wants from you. Your primary job is to make your boss look good. Everything else is basically pros. Your job is simple. You need to make your boss look good. And I'm not basically telling you that, look, you need to try to curry favor with your boss. No. For example, if your boss goes for a meeting and he makes a commitment and says that, look, we're going to deliver this report by so time, and you are the one who is responsible for delivering that report. To make your boss look good, you need to do all that is necessary and possible to make sure that that report gets delivered within the time that your boss has committed to. That's how you make your boss look good. Or for example, you go for a meeting and your boss makes a blunder during that meeting. It's not your responsibility to expose your boss in that meeting that, he made the blunder. No, it's not your responsibility. Because one of the things which I've learned in my career is that, look, there are only very few missteps or mishaps that are so life-threatening that you have to address immediately. And I learned this strategy from a more senior person in one of the companies that I worked with. He's pretty similar. Effectively, I would call him the deputy MD. But one of the things I noticed is that in all group meetings, for example, if we're having a group meeting where you had different cadres of people, and he had something that he strongly disagreed with the MD with, he doesn't raise it in that meeting. After the meeting, he goes to meet the MD, explains his position, tells the MD his position in terms of how things should go and how he feels the things should go and everything. And later on, the MD might come and communicate based on what it is. But I learned, that was something I learned from watching him do that. And I was like, that's a beautiful skill that it's something that should be adopted. You always need to remember, one of your first jobs with the boss that you work with is to make your boss look good. However that translates to in your career, you need to find that out. For the people that work with you, one of your first jobs you need to do as a boss is you need to share recognition. I repeat, you need to share recognition. For example, if you have a job in which it's a particular staff that does the bulk of the job, look, you need to give him that sort of recognition when you get to deliver. Look, for example, there's a cross-functional team that we're a part of, that my team, I was supposed to be providing updates on whatever it is that we were doing on an ongoing basis. But guess what? I had a guy that was working with me in which most of the deliverables, he was the one who was working on it. And so guess what I did? A number of those meetings, I would go and I would tell him that, look, you should be the one to give the update, that I don't want to give the update. After a while of him giving the update, everybody started recognizing as a subject matter expert. And from that, he became the guy, he became the go-to guy that everybody would ask information on with regards to whatever it is happening, whatever it is happening on the, and it improved his sphere of influence within the company in terms of people seeing him more, people knowing him more. That sort of recognition begins to show more. You know, one of the things which I have embraced, especially in this current work environment, is to realize that the people that I work with have a high sense of agency. My own philosophy is this: I treat everybody that works with me as long term consultants. What I mean by treating them as long term consultants is that I recognize that, look, the time which they have is basically their own time. Even though they are on a paid, they are paid to work with me. They earn their salary from. But I realize that I tell myself that, look, they're basically consultants. For example, recently, another head of another division in one of the other countries that I work with sent me a message and was like, "Oh, there's an initiative that we're working on, and we would like a particular member of your team to be part of it. Is that okay with you?" Now, what I could have done here is this. Sorry, I'm hearing a ring. Oh, okay. What I could have done here is this: I could have actually decided that, look, oh, based on that, I would just give a response. But guess what I did? I called the guy and I told him that, hey, there's an initiative that they want to start, and they're interested in you joining the initiative. Is this something? Do you have the bandwidth to be able to take it? Of course, as a supervisor, I know he has the bandwidth to take it, but because I recognize that, look, in the current workplace, one of the ways in which I have to do is I have to share that sense of recognition that, look, I recognize that you also have agency and you have control over your time. And so I want to give you that opportunity to make that decision. And yes, he agreed. Oh, yeah, I can take it. I'll add it to what it is I'm doing. And it went on and he joined the team and everything goes on well. The important thing here is this: you need to learn how to properly manage up and manage down. Now, everything which I've shared with you are things which I've had to learn over my career. Some of them I learned after the fact, some of them I learned before the fact. And I hope that, look, by you guys hearing this at this point in time, you can actually add it to your tool belt. One other thing I'm also going to do for you guys is there's a book that I've written, 21 Lessons I Learned in My Career. I'm going to give every one of you guys the opportunity to actually get it for free. I've sent a link where you can get a coupon actually get the book. You can actually get, once you get the coupon, you can actually go to the page, apply it. It gives you 100% discount to get the book. Now, there's one other thing which I'm going to add. This was something that just happened within the last 24 hours. There's a collaborative book that I wrote with a couple of other people from about 15 countries, about 29 other collaborators. The title of the book is Mastering Solution Delivery, Practical Insights and Lessons from Thought Leaders in Post-Pandemic Era. Now, today we're currently doing a promo. If you want to get it on Kindle, it's Amazon Kindle, it's for free. So if you can go May 1st, the whole of May 1st, you can just go on Amazon Kindle. You won't see it under my name. It's actually the lead guy who put everything together, that it's under his name. So if you find it under his name, you find the rest of us collaborators listed under it. About 29 of us from about 15 nations come together and do that. So if you want to get it for free, please do it today on Kindle. It's for free for today. So once again, I hope you guys get the whole picture. Kindle doesn't work in Nigeria. I'm sorry. There's really nothing I can do about that. But let me just let me just land this. The overall thing here is this: you need to have these three structures: a personal success structure, a professional success structure, and an organizational success structure. You need to be able to win in life, win in your career, win in the organization that you find yourself. And I look forward to hearing success stories of you guys wherever it is, whether it's in Nigeria, whether it's in any part of the world. I look forward to hearing success stories. Thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate your attention. Thank you.
I would just like to release my breath after all those punchlines and bullets that have been flying here, there, and there for the past 30 minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Toasted. It's really an honor to have you here. I'm Tuasatola, sorry, for having you here. I think you've dealt a lot of things to thinking, and I believe that with what you've shared, we'll be able to go back and redirect our career goals, our personal values, and all the rest that you dropped on us. Thank you very much. And the good thing is that this session is being recorded. So definitely, if you've not been able to get all the points, please you can make a request for the recording, and then you'll be able to go through all of them and put everything to use. So we'll be moving to the next